We will call to order the City of Riviera Beach Community Redevelopment Agency meeting, September 22nd, 2021, 6 p.m. We will have roll call, please.
Commissioner McCoy?
Here.
Commissioner Botel?
Here.
Commissioner Lawson?
Here.
Co-Chair Miller Anderson? Chair Lanier?
Here.
Also present, we have Mayor Felder. We also have Jonathan Evans, the CRA Executive Director of the CRA. We have Scott Evans, Director of Planning and Development. He is joining us by phone call. We also have Attorney Opal McKinney-Williams, who is the General Counsel for the CRA, and Shirley Desir, CRA Clerk.
Thank you. We will have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilman McCoy.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any additions, deletions, or substitutions for the agenda this evening?
None from staff, Madam Chair.
Based on the items that are located on this agenda, are there any disclosures by commission or staff in regards to these agenda items? Hearing none, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
Move to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Commissioner Botel?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Chair Lanier?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We are at the part on the agenda that is considered to be the consent agenda. All items, or all matters listed under this item are considered to be routine, and action will be taken by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council person so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Do we have any public comments for our consent agenda?
No public comments.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to pull the vendor invoices for discussion.
Very good. Pull number 1 for discussion. Any others? Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
Motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Commissioner Botel?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Chair Lanier?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Our first item of business is item number 1, which is the request for approval of monthly vendor invoices. Mr. Evans, would you like to present that item, please?
Madam Chair, staff is recommending approval of item number 1, and staff is prepared to answer any questions the board may have.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
just a point of information. If that amount, $6,376.87, if I'm reading that right, is annualized, it's over $75,800 for landscaping. I'm just wondering, is it possible, could we look into having the city take over those services? And if we did that, how many jobs could we create for people in the city? What would it cost? What's the downside of doing it? Maybe there is one and I don't see. But it just looks like something that maybe we ought to take a look at, just so that we know if we're spending that money wisely to an outside company.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
With regards to that particular item, it is contemplated that we would look to see our Parks and Recreation crew assume the responsibilities of the upkeep. We are building out what the need would be as it relates to equipment, and if there's a necessity for any additional personnel, we believe we can do it with the additional complement of staff. But that is something that we are looking at, because originally that was what was supposed to occur as it relates to the relationship between the city and CRA. And so we are looking, as a result of this particular matter, to assume those responsibilities and probably look to bring something to you maybe close to the holidays or even the first of the year that would assume those responsibilities. So it's not something that we want to see occur long-term.
Great, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead, sir.
thank you. So, Mr. Evans, in looking at it, this item is for landscaping at the Riviera Beach Marina, which is owned by the city, which includes Bicentennial Park. So if Dr. Botel's math is correct, we're talking about $75,000 a year, and this center has been here for, I think 2015. So we're talking about 6 years at $75,000, give or take, of the city's obligation that has been paid. Not that much.
That's tough, that's that amount.
So since the CRA has been operating the event center, it's been about 2015. We're in 2021, so that's 6 years. So that's the amount of money that the city should have been paying for the common area maintenance, which should have been charged to the city. Now, I brought this specific issue, I think, to you by email a couple months back, but every time we're in this building, the CRA should be receiving revenue. But on that hand, we're covering expenses that should have been responsible or is the responsibility of the city. In like fashion, I looked at the Planning and Zoning Board meetings, and then I see staff have meetings over here all the time. You know, we're always quick to say that the CRA owes the city, but, you know, just like any business, there is economic use associated with the use of these facilities just as much as it is out there at Bicentennial Park. So, you know, I really appreciate the real true cost accounting that's been offered by Dr. Botel, but the truth of the matter is, if we're going to start that, Mr. Evans, let's make sure that we go retroactive and have the city to pay every single time that somebody from the city uses this building that is basically owned by the CRA. And I'm only saying that not to be petty or nickel and dime, but the real true cost associated with running this facility is not exactly displayed on our financial reports, because nobody thought it was important to really charge the city for what it was. Because had we not used this facility, had we had a separate CRA board, we would come in like any other agency and pay a fair market value. And that goes to the other point, that the rates aren't exactly they aren't in line with the market. So I just think, in being fair, if we're going to do that, we need to make sure that the CRA is reimbursed, you know, for every dime that it's entitled to, based on, you know, the economic use being, you know, done by the city, or used by the city, I should say.
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes, go ahead.
With respect to Commissioner McCoy's point, I believe at the budget session I did communicate to the board that there was an invoice and discussions at the staff level that would look to see a situation whereby the city would remit approximately $200,000+ for the use of this facility associated with the time that we've utilized this space with COVID. And so we are looking at that. We are looking at the times in which we are having meetings. We have communicated to staff that if there, and now that the library is online, there is adequate meeting spaces to be able to do that. But yes, we do want to make sure that the cost associated with utilizing this space, as long as we do utilize it, is resolved. And so there are certain things that we're looking to bring back to the board that looks to remit the appropriate funding to the appropriate agency with regards to whether it's the landscaping element or the use of this particular facility.
So, Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead,
So
sir.
now that we've established that, if there's nothing else, I would move to approve this item. And, yeah, that's it.
Second.
Very good. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner McCoy,
Yes.
Commissioner Botel,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson,
Yes.
Chair Lanier,
Yes.
motion carries.
We will move to number 3, the item that is on our agenda.
A resolution of the Board of Commissioners approving the third modification to a lease agreement of 4,439 square foot of office space for the Clean and Safe Department located at 1229 East Blue Heron Boulevard, Riviera Beach, Florida. The acceptance of public comment cards is now closed.
So moved.
Second.
Very good. Mr. Evans?
Madam Chair, members of the board, if I could have the Neighborhood Services Director, Ms. Jenkins, make this presentation this evening.
Good evening, Chair Lanier, Commissioners, Mayor, and Mr. Evans. This item before you is a request to approve a resolution for the third modification of the lease agreement for 4,439 square feet of office space located at our Ambassador Service Center, which is at 1229 East Blue Heron Boulevard. The request is for a one-year term through October 31st, 2022, with an option to extend for an additional year through October 31, 2023. In the background that is presented there, we gave a history of our leasing arrangements with the Hill family, first with Mr. Guy Hill and with the CRA as a tenant, and later with this widow, Miss Mary P. Hill, where we've gone through several modifications over the years. We have communicated with the landlord, and they are amenable to modifying this lease agreement and extending the term. As mentioned, it will be for 1 year, commencing on November 1st, 2021, and ending October 31st, 2022, with an option to renew for 1 year. We've outlined the rate there. For the upcoming year, it would be $63,739 for the year. And for November 1, 2022 through October 31, 2023, the lease payment would be $65,013.78. We have sufficient allocated funds in our proposed fiscal year 2022 budget to cover this anticipated lease expense if approved. And we ask that the board approve this and allow us to move forward. You'll notice in the backup that Ms. Hill has already executed her side of the agreement so that we would have a fully executed agreement if approved. And I will stop and see if there are any questions.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Ms. Jenkins, so if the money is set aside in the budget, what line item would this be coming from? And what's the allocation for that line item?
If you could give me 1 minute, let me find the page for you. It's in the clean and safe budget, and in your draft budget, it will be on page, just give me 1 minute here. It's on page 37 of 56.
I don't have it up. Can you tell me the number?
I'm sorry?
What is the amount, is my question.
The amount that's, the total rental line item is $76,620.
Okay.
But that includes several other miscellaneous lease payments for
Okay.
clean and safe.
Thank you.
Any other questions in regards to this item?
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead, sir.
do we have any public comments?
Madam Clerk, are there any public comments for this item?
There are no public comments.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few follow-ups then.
Go ahead.
Mr. Evans, the possibility of turning this clean and safe facility into a temporary fire station, have we visited that idea of looking at if this became an option for us, or if we have to visit moving forward with this facility and retrofitting it? And then also looking at long-term options. Have we spoke to the landlord to see if that's a possibility, in addition to locking in a lease longer than 1 year, if we would do that? And then also get an idea of what our costs would be to actually retrofit this facility, because investing into that facility and then also only signing a 1 year lease, I may be hesitant for us to move forward in that direction if that's the direction of the board once we have the 86 fire station conversation.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
City staff did not want to presume that that was a direction that the council wanted to go. We wanted to hear what the board's direction was on Fire Station 86. We have had internal conversations. The site does pose for some significant challenges when we talk about the cover for the apparatus for public safety, and then we would essentially being looked to have to cannibalize most of the parking that's available in the back half of that particular property. But it is an option to serve as a temporary facility. If that is in fact the case, we then would have to have a more in-depth conversation with the property owners, as it will require a substantial build-out to be able to accommodate fire suppression and fire rescue services in that particular facility. But it is one of the options that we will share with the board at our meeting concerning Fire Station 86.
A follow-up, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. And then I guess my only thought would be then, if we, Ms. Jenkins, this lease, when does this have to be executed? When does our lease expire?
The current lease term expires October 31st.
Okay. Then, colleagues, I may recommend that we move this to the first meeting in October, CRA meeting, to have this ratified once we've had a discussion in depth about 86, because we don't want to take this off the table or immediately sign a one-year renewal when this landlord, if we choose as a board to move forward with this site as a possible retrofitted fire station, we want to leave that opportunity to possibly negotiate a long-term lease and also the terms of the lease, and if our landlord will even allow for that to be an option or possibility. So I may recommend that we wait till the first meeting in October for the CRA to ratify this lease. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes,
Madam Chair,
yes, go ahead.
just to note, is there any downside to waiting until the next meeting?
I'm sorry.
Is there any downside to waiting?
I will defer to our general counsel, not knowing about notice for terminating the lease if we decide to do something different or not move forward. If you could give me a minute and give her a minute to look up the original lease. That would be the question that comes to mind.
Madam Chair, I'm looking it up right now.
I'm sorry?
I was saying that I was looking it up right now.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So what are we looking for, the lease here?
I'm trying to find the passage that might refer to it.
It's listed in the documents that we
I
have
would, ma'am.
backup. It's listed in the documents that we have as backup.
Yes, ma'am, and I'm just trying to get to the right section.
We have a proposal on the table to table this until the next meeting or until we have a discussion about the fire station. Is the board amenable to that proposal?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
only concerned, I'd like to hear from our attorney first as to whether there's any downside in doing that.
Okay.
I have no problem with it. I mean, it's clearly a smart thing to do if we're going to have the potential to have a fire station, a temporary fire station there. I'm not sure that the space is big enough, but if we do, then it makes sense to wait. But I just want to be sure there's no downside from a legal standpoint.
All right, very good. Legal, or Ms. Jenkins, do you have an answer for us?
Madam Chair, I'm looking at the original resolution going back to 2014. That original lease is attached, and I don't see a termination provision, but Ms. Jenkins is also looking. I'm now looking at the 2019 first modification to see if there's any language, and I don't think there is. That being said, I would say in general, you would need at least a 30-day termination notice, and to wait until the October meeting, we would be within 30 days if we were looking at terminating. Another thought to consider is that even if this board decides, after discussion at the October meeting, to move forward with the conversation about the fire station, that from the time of the initiation of conversation through to construction, it's going to be a while. So I don't know whether terminating within a month will get you where you want to be with this property. I mean, you may still need to renew or have the additional year modification for the additional year to give you all time to have those conversations and negotiations. So that's one thing to think about. But the original lease, as I see it, and I think Ms. Jenkins was nodding her head also, I don't see a termination provision, so we would default to a 30-day, and your October meeting is going to be within 30 days.
Right.
So that would not be enough time to provide adequate notice to the landlord.
I don't see anything here looking through all the modifications, and the only other concern might be the rental rate. It's locked in, as you know, we've negotiated the rate, and I think the landlord has been very amenable to the CRA, but if we're outside of the lease term, then we may be looking at a higher rate and just looking at what the market is doing. So we just have to weigh those positions.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. And I guess just for clarity's sake, I'm not looking to terminate the lease. I'm looking to negotiate a better deal for us in the event we decide to go a long-term lease, if this board chooses to go with a location of Fire Station 86 going there. So looking at a 3 to 5 to a 7-year lease to allow for us to move our facilities there and then negotiate better terms for our actual lease agreement. And even if we decide to renew, I don't see in a clause, I'm looking actually for the clause of terminations within 30 days. I don't see that anywhere either. So being that the terms of are not outlined directly in our lease agreement, I don't think it would be an issue for us to accept or ratify this in October, or at the same time give us an opportunity to speak to the landlord and extend the lease for a longer period of time with a better rate. So there's just a few things, just for clarity's sake, that I want to make sure that we understand. We're not looking to cancel or not ratify this lease. It's just to negotiate a better deal for the city if we choose this as a location for our new fire station.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
One of the things that the board consider, and it would be a requirement for the purposes of utilizing that particular space. So in the event that we were to execute the lease agreement, we can always come back with an addendum to the agreement that speaks to a longer term and alternate rate or what have you. However, there is some situations where we would have to make sizable capital investment in the space, and then there's cost to eventually you'll have to return the space back to where it is. So there's conversations and architects and engineers that would have to be involved in that conversation. So that's a long process in and of itself. The other side of it, we don't know for certain if the property owner is even interested in that particular avenue as well. So I do want to say to the board that invariably it's going to take some type of time in the event that they're interested and that site conceivably can work to go ahead and resolve the agreement. So we can operate the way in which the board wants to move, but I think you can cure some of those things associated with an addendum to the lease agreement if it is a site that is selected and the property owner is in agreement of utilizing that as a interim station.
So, Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
So to be clear, if I hear you correctly, you're saying that if we execute this evening, we can always come back in October or some subsequent month to say, we want to have it for a little bit more time because we might want to put a temporary fire station there, or we have a conversation with her, and then we do that at that time. But this evening, we ratified this extension to the lease.
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes, go ahead.
That is correct, because just the architect and engineering and the process that we would just need to know to communicate to the board the fiscal impact associated with the modification to the space would take a couple months. So you will have to utilize that space in the interim. So it would be staff's recommendation to probably come back with an addendum to that lease agreement that speaks to a longer term or modified conditions if that is something that the property owner is interested in.
What is the likelihood, or what is the harm in doing month to month until we have these conversations about the fire station? so that we can crystallize how we want to move forward. Is that an option for us?
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes, go ahead.
I don't think that there's, we can certainly have the conversation, but we would anticipate the cost for that risk, that the property owner would increase the cost associated with going month to month with the space. So I think they would be amenable to it, but I think the cost for the space would go up.
Very good. What is the pleasure of the board? How do we move forward? Do we want to table this until our October meeting? Do we want to move forward in ratifying this lease tonight? How do we want to move forward with this?
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
I think we should ratify this lease tonight, lock in this rate. I mean, as Ms. Jenkins said, the rate could go up. Ms. Hill could say, gee, I don't want to, I could potentially get another tenant for that. It's a beautiful spot for a retail establishment. I think we should lock in this rate tonight, and then if we decide we want to do something different, we can always add an addendum at a later date, my opinion.
Very good. Any other comments in regards to this item? Very good. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Commissioner Botel?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Chair Lanier?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, next item.
Draft annual CRA operating and capital budget for fiscal year 2021-2022. The acceptance of public comment cards are now closed. We have one public comment.
All right, very good. Mr. Evans?
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. This item is to present the tentative fiscal year 2021-2022 budget for the Riviera Beach Community Redevelopment Agency. Pursuant to the conversations that we had with the board, this is the culmination of the budget process. This is our Board of Commissioners, very distinguished, very likable people. If you haven't had the opportunity to meet members of our CRA board, I'd encourage you to do so. But this outlines who the CRA board is. The CRA board is also the city council that has the responsibility of operating from a policy-making perspective for the CRA. So the primary purpose of a CRA is to address slum and blight and to assist and facilitate economic development and redevelopment. The Riviera Beach CRA was established in 1984, and as a result of that particular establishment, it provides for an opportunity to see funding that you would not normally experience invested into the community. And so later on in the presentation, I'll talk about how the funding and how it was established and drive into the benefits associated with having a community redevelopment agency. Also, you'll see as part of this budget, there is a commitment with respect to more opportunities to create wealth and create economic development within the CRA corridor and bring some projects to life that have been on the back burner for a significant amount of time. So staff has really done a good job on putting together some of the intricate parts of this budget to facilitate the economic development drive that this board has and the community is requesting. So one of the things that we did with this particular budget, and it's the first time that we were able to do that, is we were able to interweave the City of Riviera Beach strategic focus areas and to make sure that what we do on the city side and what we do on the CRA side has uniformity and consistency and is one of your 5 overarching focus areas. So we have enhanced government stewardship, strengthen community engagement, achieve sustainable economy, build great neighborhoods, and accelerate operational excellence. So we looked at the things that we're doing as part of the budget process and wanted to make sure that anything that we are doing are consistent with those overarching priorities that the board has established. And what we'll do the same thing on the city side is we'll come back with our work plan and then share with you what we've been able to accomplish as a result of following that particular roadmap. So this goes into some of the major overarching things that we are working on under prosperous and resilient and sustainable economy. Secure and approve 2 businesses for the micro business Incubator project in the new Balloon Lagoon Plaza. That's a project that we're looking to come before the board to get further direction. We did speak that there is some tweaks and modifications with regards to what was previously shared, but in order to facilitate and have this development come out of the ground, it's going to require some direction from the board. And so we're looking at those two spaces that are in that particular plaza to be utilized for future incubator space. Partnering up with other agencies and businesses to produce job fairs in the community. That's something that we have been quite successful working with multiple council members on job fairs and career source and how we can facilitate job growth and creation in the CRA, but also outside of the CRA. Moving on to great neighborhoods, the 11th Street Townhome project. The board has done a lot of work with regards to that, and that is probably one of the most sizable projects in a significant amount of time that the board is moving forward to be able to bring new housing stock to the community and something that is of high quality. So we're excited about the partnership with the CDC and the CRA with regards to this particular project. Promoting and assisting with workforce housing initiatives such as the first-time homebuyers program and a number of incentive programs seeking to provide for the opportunities for owner-occupied dwellings. This is consistent with what the board has already adopted in the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget, whereby you put $1 million in the budget to focus on owner-occupied dwellings and to make sure that we move the needle as it relates to owner occupancy. Operational excellent capital projects, we shall go over a value engineer. We look at every project and every initiative that we're moving forward and making sure that it is consistent with our procurement practices and procedures, but also we know that the items that the board has communicated about local, small, minority participation in those projects and making sure we do a yeoman's job with regards to moving the needle forward with respect to the projects that we're involved in. And so staff is looking at opportunities to utilize these projects as ways to induce and some economic development and growth. Government stewardship and accountability, we've reduced the overhead by moving to City Hall. The cost for that is approximately $120,000 per year that we will experience as a result of that particular move. And then looking at ways to move forward with procuring goods and services. One of the things that we will do as part of the budget process in the first quarter of our fiscal year, we're going to have a lunch and learn series. We're going to talk about doing business with the city, what's required, what's needed, what's an RFP, what's the intent to bid, what's an RFQ, what all the terminology that's utilized, and how do we induce economic development as a result of the procurement activities that we have going on. Community engagement and empowerment, a joint venture with Parks and Recreation, community events such as Light Up, the 4th of July, Police Night Out. We are really looking to place an emphasis on special events, and we will be bringing something back before the board that speak about special events, special event management, and also what we have planned for the Centennial Celebration. This particular Winter Wonderland is going to be spectacular. Staff has shared a lot of great ideas, and I think the community is going to be excited about how we're really going to light up the city. And staff has done an exceptional job in putting together a plan that really creates for the holiday spirit. So we're excited about that. And then, you know, continue to promote facilities as it relates to this particular space, but also what are we doing good? What can we improve on? How can we make this space the premier event space in Palm Beach County and look to maximize development opportunities by utilizing this space for future events and being a host venue for other entities?
Madam Chair.
Yes, go
Thank
ahead.
you. You mentioned the Centennial. Are we doing anything on September 29th?
September 29th.
To kick
yes.
off the year, or?
Yes, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, we are going to have a celebration. We're looking to have a virtual birthday party. So we're going to have a lot of candles and cupcakes and the like, and see how many people we can get to participate to kick off our 99th year and then moving into our centennial celebration. The next particular slide I think is very important as we talk.
We have a meeting that night. We have a meeting that night. So
29th.
we can be together.
We can.
There we go.
As it relates to the taxable value for the Community Redevelopment Agency, so When the Community Redevelopment Agency was established in 1984, there was a boundary. There was basically a district that was defined as the CRA. And so what happens when you establish the CRA, you set a baseline. So when the baseline was set, the taxable value for the property in the city of Riviera Beach within that boundary was $132 million. And so since the CRA has been an exception, you've seen the taxable value of the same properties in that area grow to over $903 million, with a tax increment growth of $771 million. So the benefit of a CRA is, because you establish that, the monies that would normally go to Palm Beach County as a result of the increase actually stays within the CRA, and the same thing as it relates to the city side. So you'll see where it says incremental revenue, you'll see that you have 3.6 million and 6.5 million that is actually the funding mechanisms that's utilized to fund the CRA. And so as the taxable value and as we push for more economic development and growth, it assists us in the revenue stream to help fund the CRA. And so that's why CRAs are such a good economic inducement tool, as it helps to, you get the money that you would normally send to Palm Beach County or the monies that you would send to the city for the purposes of addressing economic development within the particular CRA. So it allows for you to do some of the programs, some of the grants, some of the initiatives that this board has communicated and is incorporated as part of the budget. So you can see that when you do and you incorporate the statutory reduction, that we can only budget for about 95% of the revenue, and then obviously when persons pay their taxes early, there's a reduction as well. So we, as the CRA, collect between both entities. That's where you see 3.5 million and 6.1 million that goes in to fund the CRA operation. So that's important to note. And we have about 19 years remaining on the CRA where we will be generating that revenue that would normally go to the city or to
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a question. How difficult is it to add land to the CRA? And I'm asking for, there are two little streets on Singer Island that I don't know how they didn't get included, Island and the next one over. Is there any possibility of at some point including them?
Ms. Jenkins, if you want to take a stab at that one.
I believe Scott Evans is on the line. I'll make a general comment, and I'll ask Scott to opine, or the attorneys. We started this process maybe 4 or 5 years ago because there was some interest in expanding the CRA boundaries to include almost all of Riviera Beach Heights, some portions of Monroe Heights, and several streets on Singer Island. And it takes study, public meetings, et cetera, a finding of slum and blight. There is some precise language or precise requirements that are required by statute that we have to follow to make that finding. Then there have to be a number of public meetings. The item then has to come to the council, where the city council, where they agree to accept those findings, and then there is a redrawing of the lines or an expansion of the CRA. So I'll stop there and see if perhaps Ms. Williams wants to add, or if Scott could give you further detail. We did, since the time that I've been here, we did start down that path, and then there was the determination that people did not want to go through the entire process.
And it also takes county review and approval as well.
Yeah, and Madam Chair, if I may, and speak as a city manager, we would be on the city side probably opposed to the expansion because it does take revenue from the city with respect to that. But it is a pretty exhaustive process, and the CRAs are under such scrutiny from the state legislature, and those are things that make it profoundly different. So I don't know if the attorney wants to share any additional information related to the topic.
I think Ms. Jenkins really provided a really concise summary of what the process is. It is a long, convoluted process, and it contains the steps that she outlined. So if you have any more specific questions or additional information we can provide at a later date, I think we could certainly walk through in greater detail
Right.
what all of that entails, but Ms. Jenkins gave a great summary.
Yeah, I think we would like to at least look at the process and see what it entails to get to that. I think that we need to work on what we have, but there's no harm in looking.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead, sir.
so specifically, I remember having those community meetings, and those folks on those two streets, they were vehemently opposed to it. In fact, even in the Monroe Heights area, in the Acre Home Park, I mean, there was a meeting over at Jay's Ministries, and it was standing room only because people didn't want it. And because of that, I think it just kind of died down, and there was no real interest in moving forward with it.
I only asked about it for the purpose of getting those two streets because Mr. Evans, and I had several meetings with the residents on those streets, and at that time they seemed to be interested, but it's something we
Right.
can take offline and.
Yeah, and Madam Chair, one of the most challenging part is even when you do brownfields or you do when you designate and say you are in an area that's defined as slum and blight, there's a mechanism where folks say, I don't want to be associated with it until you communicate what the value of that particular designation does, and it doesn't have an adverse impact on your property values. To the contrary, it actually will improve because you've seen the numbers have shown there's been exponential growth in the area. So that's one of the things, once it's new, it's very controversial to folks. All right. So this is the letter that we got from the property appraisers that basically summarizes what occurred, but one thing that's important in that particular letter is that you see the value for new construction within the CRA was $969,000 that added to that particular taxable values. So when we get into, you can see the budget from fiscal year 2021 to 2022. The budget is up approximately about $1 million, and there's some projects and some initiatives on the capital side that can speak to that. But you can see that the overall budget from the CRA is $14 million, and of course it's a balanced budget based on the revenues and expenditures and the initiatives. So you can see where the monies from Palm Beach County, as well as the city of Riviera Beach, that create that funding mixture. And we've seen an increase from Palm Beach County of $152,000 and Riviera Beach $268,000. And the reason that the city of Riviera Beach side is higher is because the millage rate is higher. The county's millage rate is lower because they're assessing all the properties in Palm Beach County. So, 9 out of 10 times they're going to have a lower millage rate than a municipality. So we'll move into the redevelopment projects, and at this particular time, I will ask that Mr. Scott Evans take up the mantle on this presentation. I'll advance the slides.
Let me ask one question before he gets started. Where is in this budget the repayment from the city in regards to?
It's in there, Madam Chair. We can find the exact numbers, but it's in there, and I think it's actually enumerated in one of the slides as well.
Very good. Make sure you highlight that when you get to it.
All right. Mr. Evans.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. This slide goes over the redevelopment projects and programs, and starting with new business and development incentive reserve. And we've increased this amount over last year, and the amount for the proposed for this year coming is $650,000. And this reserve is reserved for a tool for the redevelopment agency to attract new development to the area. And in order to spend this dollars, we would need to bring to the board an implementation item for you to approve. However, these dollars are reserved with the thought that we would like to attract mixed-use type development projects which have high construction costs. And sometimes, in order to close the gap which exists between the high cost of construction and the value you can sell properties for, what we've seen is a lack of new developments, specifically in the Broadway and Blue Heron corridor. So we're developing this reserve to try and close that gap so that we can try and get the kind of development that the board desires that would bring not only jobs but also residents and new development, similar to the new project that was recently approved by the board, the Berkeley Landing project. And those dollars are reserved, $650,000, so it's up about $221,000 over the previous year. We've also have a line item for economic development, and this was modified. Last year, this item was, this particular line item was for the mural program, which we didn't proceed with. So we have $100,000 in economic development, and this is reserved for any future initiative that we wish to do this year related to business development, economic development, or perhaps and expanding on the Incubator program that we're going to launch.
Hold on one second, Mr. Scott Evans, hold on one second.
So, you know, when I see economic development, the next word out of my mouth is director. So could any of this funding potentially be used to combine funding from the city to hire an economic director or manager?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
We do have monies that are set aside in the city budget for the purposes of an economic development professional. These particular dollars are probably more so on the capital and project related side, but there could be a situation whereby, by virtue of binding certain things, that we can have a situation where monies can be set aside for the purposes of that particular position.
Thank you.
Continuing on, the public art city partnership, this is carried over from the previous year, and we were just looking to reserve some dollars so that we could participate in any city initiative related to public art that may proceed in the coming year, and that's $15,000. The Blue Lagoon Incubator project is located in two sections in the budget. So under this section, which is Redevelopment Projects and Programs, we've proposed $148,000 for this project. Those dollars would help us to amend the agreement, the existing agreement with the Blue Lagoon, which will be presented to the board in October, which would allow them to obtain the construction financing to build the project, which is 3 units located on the north side of Blue Heron Boulevard, just west of Avenue F. And so that amount of dollars would help us to not only to amend the agreement, but also then to launch our initiative to look for local businesses who might be able to move into those 2 locations. But since we're talking about Blue Lagoon, I'll also touch on the other dollars. We have dollars reserved also in the capital budget, and those dollars are reserved for once the project is completed, the CRA would lease 2 of the 3 bays, and then we would sublease them through our Incubator program. So in the capital budget, we have dollars reserved for not only to lease the space, but also to help the build out. So once the board selects who the new entrepreneurs, small businesses that would move into those incubator spaces are, then we would also reserve some dollars in the capital budget to help them build out their space and grow and be successful. But under this line item, $148,000 is primarily to amend their agreement so that they can obtain the construction financing to proceed. And the real delay for their project has been that construction costs have just gone up so much over the last 3 years that they've been on their pro forma for the project no longer works, so they need to amend that in order to obtain the construction financing that they're looking for.
Yes, go ahead.
So, Mr. Evans, if you could just put a pin in that for a second. Mr. Jonathan Evans, so what did we decide as far as the Blue Lagoon? Is that something that's doable under the previous solicitation, or does it need to go back out? Because I certainly asked the question because we're materially changing some of the components. Does this needs to be resolicited? And I think that's probably a good point to kind of bring up now that we're setting forth the budget, because there's no sense of putting this money into that if we're not even exactly sure if, we're still operating in the same game, if you will.
Right, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
I would have to, as it relates to the solicitation, I'd have to defer to legal, but it is a substantive modification to the existing agreement that was executed by this board. It is still with the same entity. However, there are some additional concessions that would have to be offered by the CRA to help facilitate that particular development. In the event that the board chooses not to go in that particular direction and go back out for the solicitation, it would inevitably lead to a situation whereby the CRA would have to conceivably look to probably build the project as it relates to being able to move forward, because construction cost and the increase of construction cost by 30% is what made the specific arrangement that much more challenging for the prospective developer. But I'd have to confer with legal or get legal's opinion on if it's a substantive enough modification or tweak that the solicitation should go back out to the streets.
Yes, I would like to see that as well, because this has been a long time. The original proposal has substantially changed. So we need to revisit that for sure.
So, on that point, Madam Chair, so Mr. Evans, Mr. Skies is here. What's his role in that? So, I mean, obviously we're at a standstill. Are we still paying for his services?
That is correct. We're still paying for Mr. Skies' service to assist in facilitating and working with the prospective property owner or entity, staple tenant, to assist in facilitating the arrangement. Okay. And that was contemplated as a result of that particular individual needing some assistance to work through the process.
Madam Chair, follow up.
Yes, go ahead.
So not really understanding, or it's not even material, what the nature of, his engagement or the scope. I think we need to definitely move quickly on that, because, I don't want to continue engaging his services if we now have to change courses. So can we move that very quickly to legal to find out what needs to happen?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
We're bringing this item before you in October, and we'll have all those questions answered for you. So if the board does move forward with this particular monies in the budget, the dollars will not be allocated unless the board authorizes it, but you'll have all those particular questions that have been raised related to the topic explained at your October meeting.
Thank you.
Yes, and I thought that the tenant themselves retained the individual initially. No?
No, Madam Chair, no. That was the CRA provided that particular service to assist the.
Yeah, we need to move quickly on that, because I remember having this conversation not even 6 months after we got here, and this has been a whole another 2 years.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Go ahead.
I think this project has been on the books for some time now. I think dating back to even pre this facility.
Yes.
So it's been a significant amount of time and delays associated with it. So we're looking to bring it forward, but we'll have all those questions and have a robust conversation with the board at your first meeting in October.
Well, to that point, I mean, just to control the cost. So is this the only item Mr. Skies is working on for us?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. I look forward to seeing this at our next meeting, because, quite frankly, I think we've done, or at least the board prior to us, the commission prior to us, has done a good faith effort in trying to, see this off. But, and no point intended other than just the lack of words. I don't want to continue to throw good money after bad. If it's not going to work, let's go ahead and, change directions, sooner than later. That's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Mr. Evans, if you want to continue.
Yes, the next item is Commercial Facade Grant Program. At the October meeting, the board will review the previous applications for commercial facade grants. So this line item is for a new round that the board would potentially issue in November. And then that round would open up for applicants to apply. That process takes about 6 months. So hopefully if this line item for $250,000 is approved, then in the summer of 2022, the board would then review the expenditure of these dollars. And of course, the program does take some time. The applicants have to apply, they have to be evaluated, they have to be reviewed, and then once they're approved, then the applicants then have to, of course, engage their contractors and to begin the work. So the process does take some time, but this will allow us to open up a new commercial grant program opportunity in 2022. And the final item under this is the Marina Village Phase 2 project. And we have provided a budget of $300,000. This is up over the previous year. we have now hired Jones, Lang, and LaSalle to work as our representative to negotiate with the development team. And we anticipate bringing that back for you with a November timeframe to talk about the results of that initial review and negotiation.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Jonathan Evans, would you know if that 120, how much we've expended for the Phase 2 services on the CRA side?
Madam Chair, if I may, I believe the agreement associated with the contractor right now for the Phase 2, the financial review, is about $72,000, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Evans, and I don't think they've received payment with regards to they haven't asked for a drawdown on the payment yet, but I think the cost for it is $72,000.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Evans.
Well, I guess I was speaking specifically in 2021 fiscal year. I mean, so should we expect of that 72, they've probably done 20,000 worth of work?
Madam Chair, if I may, I would say that they've probably done that because we anticipate the analysis and the report to be provided to us sometime in November. And that was, you know, they needed a 2-month process to do that, and that's at the cost of $72,000.
Thank you.
Madam Chair? Could we anticipate getting regular updates on things, on projects like that and other projects that the CRA is engaged in, just so we can be really on top of what's going on in case people ask us? It's good to know. Thanks.
Absolutely. All right. We'll go on to the next slide, and this will be presented by our Neighborhood Services Director, Ms. Anita Jenkins.
Here, Madam Chair and Commissioners, we have as items under this subcategory.
You know what, hold that 1 second. Go back to that first page. Go back to that page we're on. Mr. Evans. Now, where in this monies are the money from the CRA that owes the city? Where's that? What line item?
It's in another slide, Madam Chair.
It's not in any of this?
It's not in this particular slide. These are the projects and initiatives.
Okay.
Madam Chair, moving to the Housing and Neighborhood Stabilization section, we have primarily our CRA Neighborhood Programs, and there is a breakout for CDC support. And those programs entail items like our community garden, our neighborhood outreach, our smart home program. There's a small portion for community and economic development, and it's training support. We have our Business Sense program that is in this budget. And for our housing initiatives, the aforementioned 11th Street Townhouse project, where the dollars for that are set aside in the capital budget. But I just mention it here because it's part of the overall housing and neighborhood stabilization budget. Our community garden program, as you know, supports several gardens within the CRA. And those have expanded most recently to our Singer Island garden that we're completing. And for neighborhood outreach, we do various trainings, small events, community types of activities, community building activities throughout the year. Our smart home program helps to complement what's done through the ambassador program, and that has been very successful. And I believe through this year, year to date, we have installed 100 units. Community economic development, we're starting our 6th session with our Business Sense program. I started last night for the upcoming season. And for our housing programs, we have the Riviera Beach Renaissance First Time Homebuyers Club, our workforce grant program for private developers. We hope to fully catalyze that in the coming year, if approved. And our neighborhood reclaim program, which for the current year, we've had some robust participation by our homeowners within the neighborhood. And then the CDC support is our nonprofit partner participating with us on a number of these initiatives.
Next slide is our Clean and Safe program.
I know I might be jumping around, but I don't know where this would be either. I think it probably would be under projects. Where is the cost for the property that is at Riviera Beach and Broadway? I mean, I'm sorry, Blue Heron and Broadway, and the consultant fees or whatever in terms of trying to figure out what we're going to do with that property.
Madam Chair, that's in the capital budget, I think, to the tune of, and it's in the presentation, to the
All
tune
right,
of,
make sure you tell me when we get to that part as well. Go ahead.
All right.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Just
Yes,
while,
go ahead.
while you're on that topic, you know, I think you and I have talked about this. When we were at the P3 conference, we learned a lot about the need to hire a technical advisor, a legal advisor, a financial advisor for any potential P3 project. And that corner of Broadway and Blue Heron is potentially a P3 project. But we'll also have to do a value for money study. And I guess that's something that a financial advisor would do. Is the cost of hiring, is that what your question was maybe?
Yes.
The cost of hiring those kinds of advisors in the budget, in the CRA budget?
Yes, Madam Chair, both on the city and CRA side, we have gone through the competitive solicitation process for P3 consultants to assist us in the review and the deal-making process, and then the legal counsel to facilitate the particular arrangement. So both on the city and CRA side, we're queued up as it relates to the subject matter experts to assist and facilitate. As it relates to 2600 Blue Heron, we've actually got a study back from our consultant about looking at the market conditions, looking at the property, looking at opportunities, and so we want to have a discussion with the board, because then we're going to create the solicitation mechanism to see what the private sector is interested in related to that particular project. And that analysis was done talking to developers and looking at what the code allows for and what can actually occur on that site. And so we're doing those things with intentionality behind it, but also getting the board's approval on the solicitation document before it goes out to market. So you should be having a presentation with that here within the next couple of months.
A follow-up, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
So, and also with regard to the Reimagine Riviera Beach, I imagine we're going to do a highest and best use study of the property on both Broadway and Blue Heron, so we have a real sense from somebody who knows what they're doing as to whether or not that's the best use of that property, as well as a value for money study on those properties.
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes, go ahead.
With respect to the process that we're going to go through, yes, it would be extensive projects and studies that we'll have to do it. Now, we look at a situation where if City Hall is decoupled from the particular development, you may look at that in a different way than you look at the entire site, but we are looking at the possibility to facilitate a master developer so there's uniformity and consistency with respect to the development opportunities. But we are going to have our consultants come in and share with the board what the industry standards are, what are the things they think we should do, so we can prepare accordingly.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead.
I'll move on to the clean and safe budget, and there are four primary buckets for expenses or cost centers for clean and safe. We have administration and neighborhood ambassadors.
You know what? I'm sorry. Go back. I'm sorry. What is this? What is the CDC support? What is that $300,000 for?
That covers CDC salary, it covers outreach, it covers our education and counseling program, it covers
Education and counseling for
home ownership and for some small business assistance.
I would like to see a breakdown of that budget as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay. For clean and safe, there are four buckets, and we have administration and our neighborhood ambassadors are lumped together, and you see that there is a slight increase in that line item for this year. Our neighborhood ambassadors primarily work at the Ocean Walk and along our main corridors and in our neighborhoods, providing service and concierge activities within the community. We have our Marina Village ambassadors as another cost center, and they primarily work on the facility and exterior and providing assistance for activities here in Marina Village. Our Marina Event Center ambassadors primarily provide interior assistance and with events and major festivals, etc. And then the overall operations budget for Clean and Safe is outlined there.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
I don't want to be picky, but I'll go ahead and say this anyway. On previous pages, this is very minor, but on previous pages, you've given us the difference between the 2021 and 22 budgets in a negative if it's more money in 2022, whereas on this page, you give it as a positive. If you could just be consistent. It's a little, you know, when I first saw that negative, I thought, wait a minute, we're spending less. No, we're not. We're spending more, or yes, we're spending more in expenditures. And in this case, it's a positive. So just as a matter of consistency. Thanks.
Madam Chair, and if I may, with respect to that, we did it when you're looking at the budget balances, so the pluses and minuses. So if it's expenditure related, it's a minus. If it's a revenue or an increase associated with, then that's a positive. So that was the rationale behind it, but I know it is.
Well, excuse me, but the page that I'm looking at with the negative says RBCRA expenditures, redevelopment projects and programs. This one says expenditures, clean and safe. One has a negative and one has a positive. So it looks like they're both expenditures. Just anyway, somebody could take a look at it and make sure it's consistent.
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
I apologize.
That's okay, thanks.
Shall we move on?
All right.
Are there any questions for Clean and Safe?
And no, any questions for Clean and Safe? All right, go ahead.
All right, Madam Chair, the next is the operational account for the CRA, looking at the specific budget. So you have
Mr. Evans, excuse me, Madam Chair. So
Yes, go ahead.
I guess, other than what Dr. Botel just pointed out, the backup version is different than the actual paper version that we have in front of us. So what you're showing there is not what's in the backup. I mean, the format is different. So, I mean, and then the paper copy is what you're showing up there, but I don't understand.
There are two documents. I think you have the budget document that was updated, where we attempted to correct the pluses and minuses, and you also have a copy of the presentation. So
Okay.
if you're also looking online, you may be looking at a correction for pluses and minuses. What's on the screen or summary line items?
So which is the latest version? There's one online, there's one in our hand, and there's one up here. Which one is the latest
This is
version?
a summary of what you have in your hand. You have the summary and the full budget. So the two paper documents you have are the latest one. It's the same as on the screen. What may be online, I'm not sure if that got updated with the pluses and minuses. The
don't.
numbers are the same.
It didn't. It didn't.
So I apologize for that, but we will post the one that you have in your hand with the correct pluses and minuses.
Thank you.
Yeah, that one online needs to be updated as well, because if someone wants to go back to that, it needs to be the correct one.
Yes, ma'am, we will.
So, Madam Chair, this gets into the operation and administration. So you look at the expenditure side. So it looks at the costs associated with administration, staff, management salaries, benefits, dedication services to the city, and then special events. One of the things that we will look to do as part of the budget process and with the ratification of the SEIU contract is we're going to look at our employees in the CRA and ensure that there's parity amongst the employees in the CRA and the city, especially with the contract. And so we're going to look at peer-to-peer and make sure that we can have uniformity and consistency with what the grades and classifications are persons doing. So that's things that will be coming before the board for subsequent actions, but this is a summation of the expenditures associated with the administration operation expenditures. All right, the next item is debt service, and I will allow for Mr. Scott Evans, our Planning and Development Director, to share some components, but I do want to point out, Madam Chair, the Ocean Mall, that's the $679,000. That's the monies that were a loan from the city to the CRA and the remittance back as it relates to the payment. But Mr. Evans, if you can proceed.
Yes, the first note is the Wachovia Note, and this is a payment we've been making for approximately quite a few years now, and I believe we only have a few payments left. So in 2024, this will be our last payment, and this is a debt that was obtained by the CRA from a loan from the city quite some time ago. And then, of course, there's the Ocean Mall debt that was referenced by Mr. Evans. And then all of our capital debt was refinanced in the 2020 into these two payments that you see there. That's BB&T 2020A and 2020B, which is all of our capital borrowing that we've done. So those payments, we actually were able at the time to borrow an additional $8 million and then keep our payments very similar to the previous debt amount due to lowering of the interest rates. So those are our regular debt payments, and there's only a minor change from one year to the next.
And this should read City of Riviera Beach / Ocean Mall, just for transparency. So update that part as well.
So the next breakdown is associated with the entire budget, looks in different tranches. So you can see debt service, operation and administration, clean and safe program, enterprise and operations of Marina Village, redevelopment projects and programs, continuation from 2020 approved redevelopment programs, and then 1.1 million for neighborhood stabilization. One of the things that we do want to share with the board, that one of the objectives as part of this budget is to have a consultant assist us with taking a look at this event space and seeing what market is and what is the adequate fees for service, and giving us the best roadmap to ensure that we're maximizing the opportunities to generate revenues. The finance department does have a presentation that's queued up for the board, I believe, on October 20th. That will be part of their financial updates, and they will share some of the cost centers in the city, as well as some other components in the CRA that speak to finances. So you may see the information related to the event center, revenues, expenditures, and the rates and things like that. But we are going to look at that, working with a consultant to assist in facilitating, making sure that we're competitive in the market space and that we try to generate enough revenue to offset the cost to some degree.
Mr. Evans, let me ask you this. Of this pie, most of it is debt. How do you look at getting out of this? How do you look at reducing this?
Well, Madam Chair, one of the challenges with regards to where the CRA is positioned currently, we really have to do a concerted full court press as it relates to generating TIF. We have to get economic development and projects out of the ground to facilitate reducing the burden and eventually getting to a situation whereby you don't have to use the bank's capital only if you want to, but you have adequate revenue sources to be able to pay for projects and initiatives. So one of the things that we have to do, and one of the things that I would like to bring to the board, if the board will be so inclined to indulge us, is I've had a very productive conversations with developers about a property within the City of Riviera Beach CRA that can bring a market rate product, and they do want to have a conversation with the board sooner rather than later, because in order to facilitate the economic development opportunity, it's going to require us to look at probably a PUD, but our code has a specific provision as it relates to the size of a PUD, and unfortunately that land mass is challenging to come by, but we can see this particular project as an economic catalyst to really spur a lot of the development from the north part of the CRA moving south. And so I will be scheduling at one of your future meetings. Probably not, I wanted to shoot for your October 20th City Council meeting, but that meeting is jam-packed with a lot of stuff. But probably your first CRA meeting, they would like to come and have a substantive conversation with you all because they are getting ready to go hard as it relates to their deposit on a sizable property that can really change a lot of things within the corridor. So I will be bringing that to you all to hear from the developers themselves.
Madam Chair,
Madam,
Yes, go ahead.
what does it take? Does it just simply take a vote of this body to change the size of the PUD from 10 to 5, say?
It's a little bit more.
And before you go, tell the public, what does that mean?
A planned unit development.
Plan unit
But,
development,
yeah.
right. So you basically allow for, in a specific space, the opportunity for some concessions to be made. The quintessential example of a PUD is Marina Grand. That was a PUD to facilitate that particular development. So it's a pretty tedious process, but it can be done. Staff is also working with another municipal partner to get some information as part of the presentation. That staff will be here to share lessons learned. But at the end of the day, in order to get to a situation where the needle moves as it relates to debt service, we've got to get more projects out of the ground in the CRA as quickly as possible.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. And Mr. Evans, in conversations with these same landowners and development, I think we need to put a strong effort into providing some funding, some support, some concessions to getting some development in these projects off the ground. I've viewed a few of these projects that are looking to come to the CRA, and they will truly be phenomenal for our city. The north end of the CRA, we have to make a conscious effort to address the market rate, the affordable, and workforce. So that's actually part of my comments later when we get through the budget, to put some additional funding. But colleagues, if we can look to provide as many concessions as possible to activating our corridor, I think we need to go really all in on development, on growth, and on the housing. Not just market rate, which is the project Mr. Evans is talking about currently, but in addition to some of the other ones that we brought to the table already, which is the workforce and affordable housing. So we've done some great projects, but with some additional concessions, we'll be able to attract some of these developers that across the country are developing all around us, except here in our city. So I agree with Mr. Evans, and I'm fully supportive of it, so I think we need to move forward with it quickly.
So with these projects, the proposed market rate, there are projects on the city side, there are projects on the CRA side. So what projections on our TIF are we looking at, say, for the next 5 years in terms of, number one, looking at this debt, and number two, pushing forward the development?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
With respect to the TIF, it's really hard to calculate what the generation of the TIF would be, because some of the projects contemplate a remittance of TIF to assist in funding the project. So you may have a situation where a developer may come in and the TIF may be $1 million, but they may say, in order to facilitate the funding to see this project come, I need you to remit that back to me for, X amount of years to make the math work. So it is hard to calculate, but I can tell you that based on conversations I've had with developers and conversations with entities that are municipalities outside of our community, we're being looked at as a great opportunity to do business. It's how we facilitate the process and how do we assist in mitigating as many risks as possible for the development community. But there are a lot of willing participants that are really looking at the Broadway Blue Heron corridor as opportunities to develop within the city. And I think one of the examples of that is that our project with regards to Reimagine is actually being looked at from places all over the country and even all over the world. We have folks that are inquiring. So there's a lot of potential out there. It's now how do we create the environment that these entities can be successful and move through the process as quickly and as seamless as possible. So we will get into, this is a little overview or summation of what Mr. Evans just spoke about with regards to the debt service for fiscal year 2021-2022, and we'll provide that notation that has the Ocean Mall and what that is specific to. This is CRA Operations and Administration. And then the next gets into the breakdown as it relates to the staffing complement. We've reduced the staffing complement by 1 FTE. The public safety manager position that we did have right now, and we get into the org chart, I'll show you that, but let me go back here. So
I still want you to make sure that you put on here Ocean Mall / City of Riviera Beach, because you list all the other debtors on
Right.
here.
Yes, we will make that note in subsequent slides and in the budget presentation, or the budget document and the presentation before it's finalized and incorporated in the budget doc. So here we made a reduction in personnel. We've actually looked at the unit and made some tweaks, and have each of our ambassadors as well as existing staff has assumed some additional responsibilities, and as a result, we believe that the reduction in the position that's been vacant for some time now allows for us to provide a great level of service with no impacts to end users. And so as we go into the org chart, you'll see the modification reflected. This is the personnel summary by department. When you look at the salary, wages, FICA, FRS, 401, and the like, and so that breaks down per particular unit. And this is the Riviera Beach 2022 org chart. So we have the Board of Commissioners, Legal Counsel, Executive Director, and then we have Director of Planning and Development, Mr. Scott Evans, Ms. Anita Jenkins, that's Director of Neighborhood Services. And then you see where the Clean and Safe Manager, Mr. Nehemiah Spence, above that position was that position that has been has been eliminated from the budget. So Mr. Spence is assuming right now the role in that particular capacity. And you can see we've made the modification depicted here that the board approved as it relates to the CRA clerk / executive administrative assistant. And I would like to introduce to you and introduce to our community our new CRA clerk, Ms. Maylee DeJesus, that's sitting here in the audience with us. She has worked for multiple municipalities. She is a master municipal clerk. She has a graduate degree from FAU, so don't hold that against her. We certainly did in the interview process, but has a wealth of experience and has really is really going to bring a lot of experience to the position, being a master municipal clerk and having served in the deputy role in the city of West Palm. And fortunate for us, one of the opportunities that was afforded to us to attract her, one of her oldest is actually attending Suncoast High School here in Riviera Beach, Inlet Grove, my apologies, Inlet Grove. And so we're excited that, you know, those academic institutions that we have here are assisting us in attracting our workforce. So we're glad to have her on board.
Madam Chair, before
yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So there are 4 other vacant positions. Will they be filled in this year?
Yes, they will be filled, yes. Any vacancies that we have the intent of filling all those vacancies.
So we can't use any of that money to hire an economic development professional?
We could, but we need the positions that are vacant. We can find a way to facilitate that. All right.
You better me with that money.
And this is the breakdown as it relates to the Clean and Safe team being led by Mr. Spence, and Marina Operations and Neighborhood Services. And this is our capital projects. And Mr. Scott Evans, if you'd walk the board through the capital projects. But first, I do want to show to the board the $543,000 at 2600 Broadway. That's the monies that are associated with that particular project for the demolition, the landscape installation, and then the professional services that we're going to use for the purposes of moving forward with that particular project.
When?
I can read Councilperson Botel's lips. When are we moving forward with the demolition on that particular site? So I will ask that Mr. Scott Evans add that. But we have a challenge with that site because of some FPL utilities, but Mr. Evans would speak to that.
Yes. The FPL has let us know that they want to make some changes to a pole that's right adjacent to the building. So they are now designing that change, which will put that electrical underground right in that specific area. So we're sort of waiting on their timetable. In the interim, we will begin the demolition of the interior of the building. And you'll see a fence going up over the next 4 weeks. We're waiting to get the plan from FPL to make sure that what the work that they're going to do doesn't conflict with that. But as soon as they finalize their plan in about 4 weeks, we'll be able to proceed with the interior demolition of that building and also to fence off the site. So we're just temporarily waiting on FPL to finish their amendment to that site area to make it safer to bring down the building. They just felt like they didn't want us to start until they've made a couple of changes. And then in the workshop, we went over these capital projects. I just briefly summarized them all. Of course, the Blue Lagoon, we did reference. These dollars are reserved, but of course, there's no approval for expenditure. So this will come back before the board in October. The $195,000 is the amount that was originally reserved to participate in the construction of their site.
Let me just say, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Evans. Let me just say that the staff needs to stay on top of FP&L about this project, because I have had a project that FP&L was supposed to be taken care of, and that's been since last year. So we need to make sure that if we're going to move forward with this project, that we stay on top of them getting this project done so that we can do our part.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And then the 260, which is shown in 2023, those are the dollars that are reserved for once there is an incubator program that's been approved by the board, and incubator or entrepreneur, new businesses selected. Those dollars are reserved to help build out the space to allow them to be successful. And of course, the CRA would long-term lease the space under the concept and then sublet to a particular business. And then the hope would be that that business grows and becomes prosperous and then can move to a new location. So some of those improvements that they would make to move into this building, we would pay out of this fund to help get the space ready for our incubator program, not only for the existing business that the board selects, but any new one in the future. And moving through the utility burial project, that project, we were preparing a presentation for the board either in our second meeting in October or November. Our consultant on that project is Chen Boer, and we have recently updated all of our schedules for that project. And what the key piece we're waiting on now is the final cost from FPL. And so that will be part of the presentation that we make to the board. We are not expending any of these dollars at the moment, although they are reserved to complete that project. The CRA Renaissance Housing Program, those dollars have been approved for expenditure under the Townhouse Program that was recently approved in the development agreement through the CRA and CDC. So those dollars are approved for expenditure. And of course, the CRA board would get regular updates on the progress and various approvals that are required for that project, including site plan approval and other various steps that they need to go through. And I believe site plan approval will come to you this fall. Avenue E, street redevelopment. These are dollars that were set aside for the redevelopment of Avenue E, and as we've looked at the project, we know that's going to cost something between $10 and $12 million. As a component of possibly moving that part of the City Hall project to the Broadway corridor, we think that the financing that's required by the city, perhaps the utility district, could be included in that overall request if the CRA and City Council does elect to put part of City Hall on Broadway, which we think would have great economic benefits. So these dollars are reserved for the enhancement of Avenue E and as a part of the overall redevelopment, including potentially bringing City Hall to that site. And of course, all of those expenditures would come back before the board. They have not been authorized, but the dollars are reserved for that purpose.
Mr. Scott Evans, 1 second, please.
I have a question, Scott. It's Julie Botel. With regard to the placement of City Hall, we've seen a nice rendering of what the building could look like on Broadway, and people are enamored of that. It's a beautiful-looking building. But we've never seen a rendering of how it could look. I mean, we've seen two-dimensional maps of what things could look like. We've never seen a rendering of what it could really look like out of the ground, either on the north or south side of Blue Heron. Would it be a terribly expensive endeavor to make that available to the public?
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes, go ahead.
with regards to that, you're making a $60 to $350 million decision. I would certainly, if the board wants that done, staff can look to facilitate options that provide for a visual of what facilities in those particular spaces would look like. So we can definitely look to commission some type of diagram. I know we do have something, but I think it's pretty dated. I don't think it's as the same quality as the one that we do have for the off-site option, but we can certainly do that.
I think just to make a fair comparison, because, people look at that and they think, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Whereas they haven't really seen what it could be if it's on Blue Heron.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Mr. Evans? I'm sorry, Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Jonathan Evans, what would be the density if we kept it on Blue Heron for City Hall?
If I'm not mistaken, and Mr. Evans, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we can go, is it 6 or 8 stories?
Well, I'm sorry, no, if we kept it in the current location on the north or south side, outside of the CRA.
Oh, outside of the CRA, right now it's community facilities, so you really have, all the flexibility with respect to what you can construct.
Okay. And in the CRA, you said 6 to 8
I
in
think
our
it's
CRA.
6 to 8 if I'm not
Perfect.
mistaken.
Thank you, Mr. Evans.
A follow-up on that, if I could, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
We have engaged the services of Treasure Coast Regional Planning, if my memory serves me, to do analysis of our zoning with regard to increasing density and intensity along Blue Heron and Broadway. Where are we with that? It seems like it's been a long time since we engaged them to do that work.
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Evans, can you address the progress that Treasure Coast has made and when we anticipate the different studies coming before the board?
Yes. So Treasure Coast has prepared. They're ready to conduct the first public workshop. So we're going to be looking for a date in October for them to solicit both board and public feedback on the various work that they've been completing. So they prepared some some draft, actually, amendments to the CRA plan, which are ready once we receive public comment. And then we have been working internally. So we've been meeting with Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, the Development Services Department, and CRA to go over all of the various codes that are in the CRA and identify all of the ones that we'd like them to study and look at. And they've been coming up with various concepts and proposals to change the codes to not only increase the density and intensity, but to try and create a code that allows the developers to gain more benefit from our zoning code, but at the same time contribute to certain things that would help the city overall. So we are looking to do a public workshop in October to get public feedback on that. And we have been working directly with the Development Services and Treasure Coast to create those draft regulations.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Continue.
The next item is property acquisition and demolition. And this is money that's just reserved for the closing of the Miami Subs property. And there is a very minor item that's holding up the clearing of title. We do not anticipate that it's going to impact the property acquisition, although it has delayed it. I believe a memo was circulated to the board just to provide the details of that delay. But it's not anything to do with the city or CRA. It's a private matter, and we're just waiting for it to clear the courts so that we can obtain clear title for acquisition. And these dollars include enough money not only to acquire the property, but also to demo the site.
Hold a second, Mr. Evans.
Sorry, that property is in such disrepair. And I know it's not ours yet to mow the lawn and pick up the garbage in the back, but is there any way we can persuade the current owner, soon to be not owner, to clean it up a little bit? I've gotten so many complaints from people about the grass in the front and the garbage in the back.
If I may, Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
just to give you an update, after the email that I received, I did reach out to Code Enforcement Director, and they are in contact with the current owner. The current owner had done some landscaping, but as you said, it was not adequate. So they're reaching back out to them to see if they can do a better cut. And between Public Works and the Code Enforcement and the owner, whatever debris is there will be cleaned up. So they do have it on their radar screen. So hopefully in the next few days to a week, you'll see that property greatly improved.
Thank you.
The next item is the 2601, the Marina Village Event Center build-out, and this is just reserved. It's partial amount. It's $400,000 that we've reserved out of our existing capital funds. The CDE also has approximately $800,000 that they could contribute. So that brings us to about the minimum amount required for the build-out of the event center. And per comments made at our previous budget workshop, we will be looking to accelerate and bring back to the board some improvements we could make now that would allow us to utilize the upstairs of the event center until full build-out is completed. And this $400,000 would cover the costs of potentially putting in the floor so that that side of the event center could be utilized until a more permanent solution is approved by the board. And the 2601 block redevelopment, this is the parking lot enhancements that we will bring back before the board. So this dollar is just reserved. And this is the area around the Dairy Bell site. And this will come back before the board in the next couple of months for your consideration. And then this project was previously approved phase 2 instead of phase 1 or both. And then we have just had to reassess the costs and do some value engineering to try and reduce the amount we're going to expend, since the board directed us to only make improvements to the areas surrounding the Dairy Bell site, which we have done. So these dollars are reserved for that, but it's not authorized for expenditure until it comes back before this board for your approval. And then the final item is dollars reserved to participate in Station 86. Right now, the CRA, of course, previous agenda item today, we discussed that we lease property on Singer Island that's utilized as a community room. And so this just provides some capital dollars for when Station 86 is permanently located, that they would have a community room for meetings and use by the public. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, very good.
And
Mr. Evans?
Madam Chair, members of the board, that concludes our presentation for the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget, and staff recommends approval of the resolution that's before you this evening.
Let me ask a question. I have a couple of questions. One of them is with the fire station, 86, community room. I know that you said that there was no issue with CRA using those funds for government purposes, but I would like to get an opinion of legal, because that could be potentially an issue that can be flagged in our audit. I just want to make sure that using CRA funds for general government purposes is prohibited. Legal?
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may, it's one thing is if it's a new project and it is a defined benefit to the CRA, you can and we have utilized monies in the past to facilitate that. I think the problem from a legal standpoint, and the attorney can certainly share that, it's an after the fact. If we decided to build a community room and then we say, hey, the CRA can kick in $300,000 and it wasn't contemplated, that's where you run into.
No, I understand all that. I just want to have a legal opinion on it. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm probably coming at this from a bit of a behind kind of circumstance, so I don't know that I have the facts necessary for me to give a legal opinion.
Oh, I mean, I'm not saying right now.
Okay, so I will certainly get with the
Yes.
executive director. We'll talk with that.
Yes, certainly, I'm not saying.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, just before we let Mr. Evans
Yes, go ahead.
bring this meeting to a close, did you say when we were going to have a presentation by the Lake Park, or meet with the Lake Park staff?
Madam Chair, if I
Or
may.
some other municipality?
Yes, go
I did
ahead.
not state any names.
I'm sorry.
We are looking, probably, most likely your second meeting in October, because your city council second meeting agenda is pretty tight. So probably your second meeting in October would be when we would invite our partners from the staff from Lake Park. But what we would do is the developers would move forward with their presentation first, and then we'll come in to say, hey, you've heard all this, now this is what has to happen, the sausage making to make the deal effectively, and lessons learned. And then our staff is meeting with their team to be able to talk about it specific to Riviera Beach codes and land development regulations and
Right.
zoning, and what are the things that has to be contemplated to look at a development opportunity within the CRA.
Follow up. So I just hope that everybody has had a chance to get over there. I was first over there when they first put first couple of floors on that barge, must be now, I don't know, almost 6 months ago. And I said to the guy, okay, this is nice, but I want this in Riviera Beach, okay? So when I was there a couple of weeks ago, he said, you asked for it, I'm going to give it to you. I am so impressed with what they've done over there. It's going to be fabulous for Lake Park, and it could be just as fabulous for Riviera Beach. They've given Lake Park money to fix up parks, to do new playgrounds. I mean, this is all over and above the amount of money that will be added to Lake Park's budget every year. And they're so much smaller than we are, and it's just a really exciting project to think that we could have something like that in Riviera Beach. So, really excited. Hope everybody has a chance to.
And Madam Chair, you know, as you know, not to share the site, but the site that they're building their project on, Nautilus 220, is actually smaller than the site that they're looking here in Riviera Beach.
Yeah.
So you had the opportunity to see that development opportunity. So we expect the opportunity here in Riviera Beach to be that much more grander and provide for, if it's the board's pleasure, a great economic boost to facilitate redevelopment of the corridor.
And speaking of Lake Park, you know, they have done it without giving away their TIF. So we need to be able to giving away their, giving the TIF back to the developer. They use their TIF to be able to move forward with different and more development. Not all of it, but they have not given away their TIF to a developer because they said that they need it for
Right.
whatever purposes.
Right.
So it can be done without doing that, to use our own TIF to move other projects forward.
They have, and they've also brought property to the table as well. The development rights on property and the changes in densities and intensities to
Right.
facilitate that, to the point but the benefit to them is they're even expanding their marina, which is a competitor to ours, to the tune of, I think, about 144 slips. To also look to have a high and dry operation, so that's, you know, bring your boat out of the water. So we're going to have a pretty sizable competitor that's going to be within a stone's throw, and they're actually redoing their boathouse. The developer is redoing the city's facility that they currently have at the marina. So there's a lot of concessions in the deal-making process, and that's certainly something that we're looking at very closely and extracting what we can for the purposes of negotiations when we start having a conversation, if we can move forward in such a fashion.
Yes.
Could I follow up? I might need to get a consensus from the group. I had a recent opportunity to have a meeting of the Tourism Implementation Group, and we discussed the fact that Lake Park, being such a close neighbor and the kind of work that they're doing, might help us to partner with them in some ways in our tourism efforts. And I saw John Linden at the League of Cities meeting today, and sort of mentioned that to him, and they would be very interested in partnering with us because we have so many things alike, and it might help us to promote ourselves as a tourism region for the marinas, for the, you know, the kinds of amenities we're going to be able to provide people. So I hope that's okay with everybody. I couldn't see a downside.
Yeah, we certainly, and the manager and I have a great relationship, so we're working on some other initiatives. So that's definitely something that we would look to create that regional approach to tourism and economic development.
Yeah, great.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
So, Mr. Evans, speaking of this project,
I think, and I just want to make sure that I'm correct, that the difference between what they're doing is because the developer has the land and the developer is doing the project. They're not doing this on the town of Lake Park's property, correct?
So I believe some of the parcels, well, the marina specifically, the marina and some of the parcels in close proximity are under the auspice and control of Lake Park.
Right, but aside from the marina, obviously they're going to, as a gesture of goodwill, they're going to develop the marina for the town of Lake Park, but the actual development is not anything owned by the town of Lake Park, is it?
Right, their first phase, I don't believe. I think subsequent phases is property that's owned by Lake Park.
But is there any kind of P3 arrangement with the marina? Are they looking to gain any kind of revenue from that?
Yes, they're actually, it's going before their board, I believe, October 13th. They're hoping to become the P3 partner with Lake Park on the other parcel, which is the subsequent phases of their development. And so we'll know a little bit more about that when they do present, but the intent is that they work in collaboration with the town of Lake Park on the properties that they own and even some of the existing parking that's utilized for the boat storage and the ramp, the boat ramp. Those are all areas that are contemplated as part of the new development and the expansion of their marina.
Okay.
And
Madam Chair?
Madam Chair, just a quick follow-up on that. They're already in contract with the Riviera Beach, the owners of the Riviera Beach properties. I think the developer is already in contract with those.
Right.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
And I don't want us to get too far ahead and expose too much information because they are in contract, haven't closed, but there's a lot of other details. That parcel is bigger, and there's a lot of things that our manager is going to work on. But that second meeting in October is going to be vital for moving forward and also showcase what options we have. So I do appreciate the conversation with my colleagues, but I want us to kind of have some tact when it comes to moving forward because this can be phenomenal for both towns. For our city and for the town of Lake Park. And as Dr. Botel stated, that we can have some partnerships that will expedite the tourism that we're building now. So this is a great discussion, but let's look to possibly workshop this after some things have been put in place.
All right, very good. Ms. Evans?
That concludes our presentation, Madam Chair.
Very good. Any discussion in regards to this presentation for this evening?
Yes, Madam Chair?
Hold on one second. We have public comment.
We do have a public comment, Ms. Mary Brown.
All right, let's do that. Sorry about that, Ms. Brown.
Good evening, Ms. Mary Bram. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I hope Commissioner Kashama Miller is feeling well this evening. I miss her. I would like to say, the CDC, the $300 salary, this has been asked numerous of times. We're gonna start calling out the staff, not just on the CRA side, but on the city side too. Because if we're going to be better as a city, and if we expect to move forward, our CRA has not done anything except for to throw this building up here since 1984. The city CRA director informed you all about that. The Blue Lagoon, I was in here in some of this workshop, and Dr. Botel, you make mention to Scott Evans. Make sure that you tell the general public it's not over there on the island. That Blue Lagoon is a project that is over here. Things that were outlined in this, in their narrative here, they did not specify that because Tony Sub was supposed to go over in there, and there's a lot that's going on there. So when you make your budget there, you need to be inclusive of exactly what we're anticipating on doing, what we're looking at. This is what Scott Evans did here. A fourth grader could do this here. When he speaks about Incubator projects, that Blue Lagoon project fell underneath all of this. How would the general public know exactly? See, it's a saying that say, you bamboozle us, but you can't bamboozle Ms. Brown, because Ms. Brown been around this CRA and as far as government business a mighty long time. And they throw things at you all because they feels like you all are not catching it. But this cannot go on. I admire Mr. Evans for the background where he says here, our neighborhoods and our existing assets are not to be lagging. We want to be inclusive with our CRA. And we need our CRA, the staff on their side here, to do their job. Because if they do not do their job, Ms. Bram and others are going to be advocating for them to leave us. That's just all it is to it. It's time out for the BS. Because Scott Evans have given us BS for up 10 years, and time out for that. He never explains things thoroughly. This is what he would do. This is what he would do. He will only give you little bits and pieces, and you can't narrate like that. Riviera Code, D.R. Hart. On Monday, I was all over there in that complex building that are built over there. Practically every last one of those are sold over there. The signs are sold. Ms. Brown was over there. They was holding a meeting. Ms. Brown was over there. So you see, if we build something that is valuable and worthwhile in our community, they will come. It is a multicultural community. There you go. Our land that we have, I want the best usage of our land what we have. And I do not want anything just thrown up there.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions or comments in regards to this presentation? Very good. Madam Clerk.
Madam Chair?
You had a question?
I did prior to Mary Brown.
All
Ms.
right, go
Brown
ahead,
was-
sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Evans, the budget in regards to addressing parking, I didn't see anything in reference to parking possibly at our marina, whether it's our Ocean Mall or our current marina. I want us to really look at some economic engines for this coming year. We're losing money, especially our chair spoke about the TIF that comes from, I believe FP&L has the majority of our TIF right now is where our TIF money is coming from, and that's starting to go down, it's reducing. So we have to really create some economic engines, and I think our parking, I think our housing really needs some additional focus with funding. My biggest concern is that we haven't put enough emphasis on the housing component, and I really want to put some additional dollars into our workforce and affordable housing, especially in our CRA. I love the projects that we're looking at because the neighboring municipalities increasing their budget by about 25% with that one project, that one parcel that is literally just over 2 acres. It's one lot, just a couple lots that they put together, and they're increasing their entire operating budget by 25%, which is phenomenal. So I really want us to look financially at using this budget and the finances we have to increase the revenue that's coming into our CRA, and then of course on the city side, since we have Superman on both sides. So those are a few things that I want us to really work on.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
With respect to the budget, we have $400,000 that's in the budget for the purposes of parking on the city side. Staff has been working with legal with regards to the appropriate ordinances that have to be put in place to facilitate a parking operations. And so our intent is to look to generate some revenue and bring that forward for the board's consideration here this next year. So we are working towards that. With respect to the housing, we have approximately $1 million in the cities on the city side for housing. We have over $1.5 million on the CRA side with respect to the 11th Street project that we're moving forward with. And then we've also have some commitments from some other partners because we want to look to leverage another $1 million from other entities that are looking to work with us. So we do have some different tranches of monies, and it is going to be a priority to move forward with some workforce and affordable housing in the city and in the CRA.
And follow up, Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Evans, how much do we have on the infill housing development?
The monies that we put in the city side is about $1 million.
Mhm.
And obviously the inventory of the properties that we have. So we have assets on the property side. So there's going to be a situation whereby we're going to look for partners and opportunities to work with entities, whether it's Habitat for Humanity or other entities that are willing to bring some capital to the table so we can make the monies that we have and the property that we have go a little bit further.
Okay. It's just, I really want to try to find some additional revenue and funding just to really focus on the housing, because our CRA addressing slum and blight, I think we have to make a conscious effort across the board to put as much resources as possible into providing housing. We're in a housing crisis nationwide. We have the highest rental in the country is right here in South Florida in regards to the income versus rental rates. So it needs to be addressed where that we as a community can actually go in and assist our residents with providing some resources, whether it's rental, whether it's first-time home buyers, and just focus on those first-time home buyers, focusing on those workforce and affordable housing. So, colleagues, I'm looking to see if we can find some more money somewhere to really focus on building some additional development, some of the land and lots that we have to get those developed, whether they're ground ups, whether they're rehabilitations, and obtaining some of the land that we have in the city and developing it immediately. Because a biggest knock on the city is that we're just kind of land banking property and nothing's happening. So we have dilapidated buildings and we own a lot of land, but Mr. Evans is putting together plans and strategies where he's addressing the intensities and densities on Broadway. We're addressing the CRA areas, but I also think that we need to start developing some of these properties that we're sitting on, whether we're selling them to investors and forcing them to develop, or we're developing them ourselves. Our CDC is doing an amazing job. So giving Miss Anita over there the opportunity to say, here's some additional funding, get 10 more first-time home buyers on the market. So what can we do, colleagues, to find some additional money to get some first-time home buyers, affordable and workforce housing immediately? And those are all the comments. And Mr. Evans, the budget looked amazing. The only concern I have was that really want to just address the housing, because you took a lot of the event planning and coordinating that we had issues with the social engagement, focused on the development, focused on the housing crisis, focused on some of the things that's going to be impactful foundationally for our CRA. So that's exactly what we asked for over the last 2 years, and that's what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions in regards to this item?
I was going to not say nothing, Madam Chair, but I can't agree with that. The budget looks amazing. Mr. Evans, in fact, you know, what you put up on the screen, well, actually what's in the backup for special events showed 78,000, and I thought I was not looking at it correctly, but then on, I guess in the pamphlet, it shows 30,000. So clearly there's a lot of things that's not connected with the budget. That's just one of them, but there are inconsistencies between the two. So I can't agree that the budget is nice. Clearly we have to do better, because I don't even understand how I'm looking at administrative special events on one page and it says one thing, and then the online backup says almost more than double. So that I can't agree with. So I would hope that we do a better job in putting it together, because I don't really know which one is actually, in fact, the accurate special events budget line item. Would you be able to revisit that, Mr. Evans?
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
we can certainly revisit that.
Thank you.
I can provide a little bit of backup info if the chair would like.
Yes, sure. And also, yeah, go ahead.
So there are two sections of special events. One of the special events section is all of the items that are detailed in the budget. I think it's around page 49. And that's that higher number that we've reserved for all of those events we talked about. Then there's another, under special events, the CRA reserves about approximately $30,000 per year. And this is there's no specific event listed to that. We use that if there's a new business opening, or if we decide to promote one of our new programs or projects, if we decide to create an event around one of our capital projects that might be starting. So those dollars are separate and different, and therefore general implementation of what is needed throughout the year. So yeah, I just wanted to address that. We do have two different sections for special events.
Follow up.
Yes, go ahead.
So even if we did, Madam Chair and members, the point is, the purposes of our budget is a spending plan, and it's not exactly for the members of this city council, it's for the people that we serve, the end users. And I'm looking at two titles that are exactly the same on two different documents, and they have two different amounts. So if the true purpose is in fact that we want to have $78,000 in operation and administration for special events, then it needs to be very clear and not convoluted with another slide that's been presented to us that says 30,000 for the same exact general expenditure. So, you know, for the very purpose, and I don't know if finance is a part of creating this budget as far as the layout, either Mr. Evans?
I can address that. So the CRA finance does assist us, but the book and the naming of the various line items is done by the CRA. And we could certainly go back and correct any of those that have similar names to add more detail.
Thank you.
And I'm going to have to agree that this was not specific enough, and it was a bit sloppy. So we have to do better with these budgets, especially when we have, we list out all these events. This CRA is supposed to be about looking at slum and blight in neighborhoods. And we have, a plethora of events that we have. And when we're spending money, we don't see it. We see pieces here and there in the budget, but yeah, we need to do better with this budget. I have to agree on that piece. Any other questions in regards to this item? Very good. Madam Clerk.
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Commissioner Botel?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Chair Lanier?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good. At this time, we will have public comment. I'm sorry to the public for having to wait for us to get through this item. That's how it is some evenings. Madam Clerk, could you go ahead with public comment, please?
We have two
Let me
public
read the,
comments.
hold on a second, let me read the statement. Please be reminded that the CRA Board of Commissioners has adopted rules of decorum governing public conduct during official meetings, which has been posted at the front desk. In an effort to preserve order, if any of the rules are not adhered to, the Commissioner Chair may have any disruptive speaker or attendee removed from the podium, from the meeting, and/or the building if necessary. Please govern yourselves accordingly. Public comment shall begin at 7:30 unless there is no further business of the CRA, which in that event it shall begin sooner. In addition, if any of the items are being considered at 7:30, then comments from the public shall begin immediately after the item has been concluded. Any person who would like to speak during public comment, please fill out a public comment card located at the front desk and give it to the staff before the public comment section is announced. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
I have Lloyd Brown, followed by Mary Bram.
Well, let me see if I can get this in 3 minutes right here. Yeah, my name is Lloyd Brown. You already know that, so I'm going to stop talking about that. I grew up in Baltimore, and I never knew anything about integration because we were already integrated in my neighborhood. My neighborhood, we had people that were white, black. I mean, it was some Italians, but we had stores on the corners, whatever. But these Italian people knew us. They weren't from Israel, they weren't from China, and they weren't from all these other places across the water. Now, for one thing, I'm trying to do this in less than 3 minutes, so I got to talk pretty fast. Now, you know what? I want to get back to Riviera Beach because, I grew up in Baltimore, so that's a whole different story. Only thing I can say about Riviera Beach is this. We don't do anything to help the people in Riviera Beach. All the taxpayers should share equally. They should get equal share of the benefits that the city is doing. I mean, property, whatever. Code enforcement, they should be fair. Police department, they should be fair. Everybody should be fair. I mean, you can't have an individual who's on the council who they say that he's beat on his wife and he's still here, or a police chief to unarrest a man and he's still here. That doesn't make any sense. So, because you know what? Those people hang together. And the people, you know what? In my right, you got to be some stupid people You see your roads, they talking about putting $5 million over here on E Avenue. You know why? Because the water's rising. Remember that song, Temperature's Rising, Not Surprising? Well, the water's rising, and it's not surprising. So these developers are coming here trying to buy all this. Lawson got a few raggedy-ass properties, raggedy properties over there. And that's why he's trying to get all that developed. And there's a couple other people up here on the council that has property over there. And they probably got property everywhere else. But the only thing I can say, when a police chief let a man off who does something to his old lady, and then his old lady, yeah, she's gonna come back and she's gonna say, well, he never touched me. Wait till he get behind the closed doors. She don't want him to ruin his career. She don't want to ruin his career, and she's gonna marry the man. So I'll say anything to keep the man in. You know what? I wish I had more to say, but I would try to get this in 3 minutes, so that's why I recorded it. So if you don't like what I said, then that's on you. But I think this man cannot run the city, run things in the city or tell the city about how to develop if he can't even keep his home life straight. He got too much shit on his mind. And I'm gonna tell you like this, the police chief, for what he did, that means he's not fair. The code enforcement not fair. They do for their friends, and they do for all their friends get the benefits from whatever the city has that you can benefit from. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Riviera Beach. I'm going to say something else here too, pertaining to the CRA. I see it is a vacancy here for a senior project manager, CRA director. I hope you get a good one. Okay? All of these other vacancies here, I want real good people in this city here that are dedicated to this city here, that see us as a city that should be invested in, and they will bring their investments into our city to help us build upon. Welcome aboard, Ms. Nugent. Inlet Grove is a good school. Suncoast is one, too. I want to say something about the librarian. Our librarian, city manager, CRA director, thank you for bringing that library over in there. But it cannot have an antiquated leader. We need that library up to date. We know that it's there, and if we are to build it out, number one, a real incubator. Nooks download books, audio books. Suppose someone is deaf. We need those things in that library there. Securing capital investment to help the manager as well as we as a city build out our library. 4, outreach components. Someone that is in the library that can do some outreach. We have a lot of daycares in this city here that we can go and we can serve them and get them engaged in our library. We talk about building up our library. We have to think innovativeness and step out of the box in order to build up our library. Librarian invested in our library. That's the elephant about our library. If we have no one that's invested in the library, our library would not thrive, it would not grow, and it would not serve the hub of this community like it's supposed to. 6, rewrite programs. Rewrite programs for that library to bring us where we need to be at. 7, we need a top-notch librarian. I'm tired of this friend and buddy stuff. I went over to the library and I asked Mr. Johnson to move that copy machine because when I come in there and do my paperwork, the computer desk sitting there. She reading what I have. I asked him to move it. Some things there that can be done. We need a good librarian, a top-notch librarian that can move us to the 21st century. Not just myself, but Ms. Bram as well as others. It is nonsense for us to move out from in spaces that we are and try to build on when we don't have the top-notch people.
Thank you so much, Ms. Brown. Very good. Is that our community, is that our public comment?
That is all.
All right, very good. Can we have any discussion by the Executive Director, Mr. Evans?
None, Madam Chair.
Any discussion by the General Counsel?
None, Madam Chair.
Very good. We will start with the Mayor. Any comments, sir?
No comments, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Lawson?
No comments, Madam Chair.
Commissioner McCoy?
Nothing.
Commissioner Botel?
Just a quick comment, because when I was at the League of Cities meeting in Orlando several weeks ago, I talked with a few people from other cities and about the structure of their CRA. And while many of them have the same structure that we do, where the city council acts as CRA directors, some have in addition an advisory board made up of architects and maybe community planners. And I just wonder if staff might take a look, for me anyway, if not for others, into the structure of other cities' CRAs and whether or not it would behoove us to have some kind of an advisory panel that could help us understand the issues that are so complex as we move forward. So I'm just asking if staff could take a look and maybe bring back to some subsequent meeting. Nothing urgent about it, but I would like to know if there are other cities, and if so, where are they and how is it going for them to have advisory boards. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. I just have one announcement. The Urban Farm at Barracuda Bay is having a Halloween Inn for kids ages 3 to 15. That's going to be Saturday, October 30th. And that is our meeting. We adjourned.
No. You see how clear my throat was?